As a forensic pathologist, here's what I saw when Charlie Kirk was. The gushing blood points to a jugular vein injury. His arms pulling inward is very typical of decorticate posturing, which occurs usually during catastrophic brain damage. At 200 yards with a rifle, which is what would probably cause that, bullets don't just pass through the neck, they would fragment and destroy everything in their path. With that kind of injury, he would have lost consciousness within seconds and survived for less than a minute and probably felt nothing. Law enforcement always finds the shooter, and violence in response to speech is never justified.
The autopsy is out, and they saying Charlie Kirk did not feel a thing, sis. They saying from the moment he got hit, he was gone instantly. And that is why we gotta be real about this event. It doesn't matter if you left, right, or sit on the fence with one side of your butt cheek. Baby, this was an execution. Now don't get it twisted. Every assassination feels sudden, but history teaches us there's levels to this. Now I ain't comparing Charlie to Dr. King, but when he got in Memphis in 1968, he wasn't gone in an instant. The civil rights legend fought for hours in that hospital bed before the doctors finally called it. That window gave America a moment to hope, to pray, to cling to the idea he might survive. Same with Malcolm X back in 1965. He was rushed to Columbia Presbyterian after being multiple times at the Audubon Ballroom, but the doctors worked on him for a stretch before pronouncing him gone. Even Medgar Evers, struck down in front of his own home in Jackson in 1963, lived long enough to be carried into an emergency room still breathing. Charlie Kirk, none of that. If the autopsy reads like folks expect, fatal trauma on impact, no survivable window, then his case lands closer to the cold, clinical, drop him where he stood style of assassination. And that detail matters because it speaks to intent. It wasn't just about silencing him, it was about making sure he had no chance to fight back, no time for last words, no iconic deathbed speeches. And that's why Owens and Trump are watching this autopsy like hawks. If it says what everybody suspects, they'll spin it as proof. Charlie wasn't just a casualty, he was a target. The speed of his death becomes part of the story. They wanted him gone quick with no chance to resist. That framing has power, especially in a movement built on martyrdom.
People that are telling me at just within 48 hours before Charlie passed away, his top Jewish donors were pulling funding from him, demanding that Charlie take their name off of the building that they had donated to Turning Point. I guess I can figure out who that is, how many people could have donated a building. And then once Charlie was killed, they said, never mind, put it back on the building, okay? Charlie himself had alluded to a tremendous loss of money coming in, and we'll speak about that more. More people are going to come out with information. This is all inevitable, okay? And I'll also point you in this direction. You guys remember Bibi recently was on a PR blitz, despite the fact that he was fighting this 96,000 front war because it do nothing, okay? He was doing a ton of podcasts in America. He went on to Patrick Bet-David's podcast. He went on to Brennan Tatum's podcast. He went on to the Nelk Boys podcast. Anybody find it weird he didn't do Charlie Kirk's show?
Now, Candace Owens didn't waste a second playing nice. From the very first words of her podcast, she made it clear, in her eyes, Charlie Kirk wasn't just gone, he was taken out. Not passed away, not tragically lost, executed in broad daylight. And she dragged anyone she thought was spinning lies about his death. What made her rant stand out wasn't just grief, it was fury. She said straight up that she wept, something she never does, and then pivoted to fire, accusing political figures and media voices of twisting Charlie's story to serve their own ends. She even called out one leader by name, accusing him of misrepresenting Kirk's last letter and acting like Charlie died as a soldier for his country. Y'all gotta clock who I'm talking about. I don't want to be on some hit list. Owens wasn't having it though. In her words, Charlie had been under pressure, cornered by billionaires and donors, angry about his willingness to platform dissenting voices, and that pressure was reaching a breaking point before he died.
I can tell you he didn't work alone on the internet because it seems that he became radicalized on the internet. That's just by watching same things that you're watching and hearing. It looks like he became radicalized over the internet. And it seems like he has wonderful parents, brought in a wonderful neighborhood, smart guy, great boards, great marks, great student. And then something happened to him over a fairly short period of time. It looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left. A lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected. But as you understand, I think very well from the tone of your question. Thank you very much.
Trump, of course, entered the conversation in his usual way. His public statements leaned into martyrdom, treating Charlie's death as part of the same storyline as his own brushes with violence. They tried to take me out, they took him out, and they'll try again. For Trump, Charlie wasn't just a fallen ally. He was another brick in the wall of MAGA persecution. The image his camp put out with Charlie's face flanked by the U.S. and Israeli flags only fueled the conspiracy-minded buzz that Candace herself was already stoking. The result, a split screen in real time. On one side, we got Owens, raw and emotional, framing Kirk's final days as a man under siege, hinting that his refusal to bend to outside pressure may have sealed his fate. On the other hand, Trump inflating Charlie into a movement symbol, a rallying cry for the patriot who feel constantly under attack. Between them, their voices drowned out almost every other conservative figure trying to make a measured statement. And then there's the media reaction. Mainstream outlets mostly highlighted Erica Kirk's widow's speech, powerful words about not letting Charlie's mission die. But on social media, Candace's anger clips are what went viral. Her accusations, her fire, her vow to expose anyone trying to slide into Charlie's chair, that's what lit up timelines. She wasn't just grieving her friend, she was marking territory, declaring herself the keeper of his legacy, and daring anyone, donor, ally, or politician, to contradict her. That's the spin battle in motion. Trump turning Kirk into a martyr for MAGA, Candace turning him into a martyr for truth, and the public, the side that cares, are left sorting through grief laced with conspiracy.
To wake up. Because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right. We all thought that at some point. We believed that. You're my enemy, you're my enemy. It is not a battle between Russia, Ukraine. I don't care what your political issue of the day is. What is happening right now in the world and what just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus goodness.
Now let's get into the part that got the blogs really buzzing. The whispers about whether Charlie Kirk's death was just a random or if it had bigger fingerprints all over it. And sis, the theory that keeps circling is that he crossed the wrong people. I said their names already, but from now on, I'm gonna call them that blue country in the Middle East. See, for years, Charlie was one of their loudest defenders. You couldn't catch him on stage without hearing him hype up their government, their policies, their special relationship with America. He fundraised with them, stood side by side with their biggest lobbyists, defended them on college campuses. He was a golden boy for the cause.
Let me ask you, in the conflict of versus Hamas, who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the government are evil, but I think also that there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children.
But let's
futile.
Let's hear it out.
There is no justification, Mr. Kirk, for invading hospitals, for innocent populations, and dragging out a war which is damaging Israel and the West's security.
You've made that point, but
It's not a point; it's a moral truth, isn't it?
Okay, yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish, I let you talk.
But about a year ago, the tone started shifting. It wasn't loud at first, just subtle. Instead of full-throated praise, he began asking sharper questions. Instead of parroting talking points, he started platforming guests who weren't 100% in line with the narrative of that blue country in the Middle East. And if you know anything about politics, you know even a crack in the armor can look like betrayal. Fast forward to just days before his death, Charlie sat down with Ben Shapiro, and word on the blogs is that conversation got uncomfortable. He pressed harder than usual, dropping tough questions about policy, about influence, about who really benefits from the billions America sends overseas. Looking back, that interview feels eerie, almost like foreshadowing. Folks now replaying clips saying, yep, that was the moment he signed his own check.
Ben, some people would accuse of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So ethnic cleansing, the idea, presumably, that population movement is equivalent to ethnic cleansing. I think ethnic cleansing is a term that's been fairly recently coined to describe population movement during war. And the reality is that's been ongoing for literally all of human history. The idea that is, quote unquote, forcing people out of the Gaza Strip, that is not the stated policy of the government. The idea is if people want to leave, they can, but they're not being forced to leave.
And here's where Candace Owens' podcast slips right into the conspiracy lane. She claimed Charlie was under heavy pressure from billionaires and donors, the very folks who didn't want him opening that door. Add 2 and 2, and the internet is saying those donors weren't just wealthy Americans, they were allies of that blue country in the Middle East. And if Charlie was really about to pivot away from lockstep loyalty, that made him dangerous. History ain't clean here either. Plenty of voices who criticize that region have said they got smeared, deplatformed, or cut off from funding. The narrative is, if you speak too loud against them, there's a price. And in Charlie's case, some are whispering the price wasn't just losing donors, it was going 6 feet under. Now, I'm not saying this theory is fact, but look at the timeline. A year of subtle criticism, a tense sit-down with Shapiro, Candace herself screaming about billionaire pressure, and then boom, Charlie drops instantly. No chance to fight, no chance for last words. That's why the streets keep asking, was this random violence, or was it a warning sent to anyone else thinking of breaking ranks?
However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite.
Now let's step away from the for a second, because if history has taught us anything, it's that sometimes the real danger ain't the enemy outside, it's the betrayal inside. And that's the whisper haunting this whole Charlie Kirk story. Not just who pulled the trigger, but who stood to gain once he was gone. Think about it. Charlie wasn't some random activist. He was a brand. He was a movement. Turning Point USA wasn't just a campus thing. It was a multi-million-dollar machine funded by donors, boosted by billionaires, with Charlie as the golden boy at the center. You remove him from the board and suddenly there's a vacuum, an empty throne, a chair that everybody claims to honor, but plenty of folks would love to sit in. And Candace Owens, sis, said it straight. She warned about people sliding into Charlie's chair. That wasn't metaphor. That was a shot across the bow. She knows politics is cutthroat. One day, you're the voice of the youth. The next day, your so-called friends are already auditioning to replace you. And if you think that sounds dramatic, just remember, Julius Caesar's end didn't come from strangers. It came from the very senators he thought were allies. Betrayal is as old as power. So the Judas question here is, who benefits most from Charlie's silence? The donors who allegedly thought he was straying from the script, other conservative influencers who've been chasing his spotlight for years, or maybe political heavyweights who'd rather have his energy folded into their brand than risk him going rogue. Now, I'm not saying his inner circle plotted his demise, but the streets are side-eyeing how fast the vultures started circling. Leadership at Turning Point already talking continuity. Other voices in MAGA land stepping up with tributes that sound a little too much like resumes. And the loudest, Candace herself swearing she'll guard his legacy while staking her claim as the one who knew the real Charlie best. But here's the flip, sis. What if it wasn't Judas at all? What if this wasn't some grand scheme by billionaires, donors, or allies? What if it really was just one man with one split-second act of violence, no conspiracy strings attached? Even if that's the truth, doesn't matter. Because in today's world, perception is reality. Candace, Trump, and the movement already spun it as an execution. And once the narrative locks in, the facts don't stand a chance.